Well, all right. So if you missed it, I already made a video previewing the Buccaneers offense and how it should attack the Commanders defense, what the Commanders defense can do to try and counter that. Check that out if you haven't already. But now we're going to be doing the other side of the ball. You don't have to watch them in the right order, although it is designed that way, but you can watch them out of order. It's fine. Let's talk about Jaden Daniels in this Commanders offense, which played the Buccaneers earlier, but at the same time, it was week one. It was Daniels' first start. You have to imagine that factors in. How could things be different this time? So we're going to start off with some charts before we get into the film. Also, I'll mention right here, I do have a movie channel. If you want to hear my thoughts on movies and things of that nature, you can check that out. The link is in the description below, Jackson Kruger Movies. But yeah, you see some numbers. It's interesting. So on the other side of the ball, we previewed how Tampa Bay is really good in all these categories. Washington not so good. According to PFF, it's a little bit different. So what you're looking at is PFF grades for each positional category. You see, Commanders definitely have some advantages. I mean, the fourth best passer in Jaden Daniels, that's not even factoring in his rushing, versus the 19th best coverage. That's a mismatch. 15th best receiving, though, so maybe you have a bit more of an even battle down the field. Pass blocking and pass rush have both kind of been, could use some improvement this season by both of these two teams. Another advantage here by the Commanders is their running has been very good. Even though PFF hasn't been crazy about their run blocking, they've still been able to make plays happen. Part of that is, again, Jaden Daniels. Tampa Bay has not graded out as well run defense as you might expect, but they do have some players that maybe can create them to be better than the sum of their parts, I guess, like Vita Vea obviously being the key factor, who we can talk about. First, I want to touch on Jaden Daniels' numbers against the blitz. You see that, so PFF actually says he's not as good when he is blitzed, although it is worth mentioning the passer rating is roughly the same. Now, PFF grades also account for sacks and for rushing, so they say he's actually a little better when there's less guys in the pocket. He can navigate around and run around and make things happen a little bit easier. When you're blitzed, usually the ball has to get out of your hands quicker, but when the ball is getting out of his hands, it's usually the same whether he's blitzed or not blitzed. This is, of course, important when you're playing Tampa Bay. Todd Bowles blitzes second most in football. Also, let's look at some of their offensive players and how they perform when they're playing man and when they're playing zone. Specifically, Terry McLaurin, who he's a zone killer. You can man up against him. You can beat him. In fact, Dyami Brown has more yards per route ran. He's the most on the team. McLaurin is number 2. McLaurin is their guy. He's the guy who, he's the engine of this offense, or really the engine of their passing attack. Daniels is the engine of the offense. But, McLaurin means so much to this passing attack. And you have some other players who I think are interesting. Olamide Zaccheaus is a really good zone coverage beater. Noah Brown, very good in zone coverage. They don't really have a man killer. Dyami Brown's kind of been the one guy, but he doesn't perform as well against zones. So, he's someone you can look towards there. But I think that's worth noting. It is worth mentioning Tampa Bay prefers to play zone, so that's not the worst thing in the world. I like a lot of zone blitzes, so maybe you have a chance there matchup-wise if you're Washington. I will touch on the numbers that happened the first time these two teams played. I feel like some people will say, why even bring it up? But hey, all facts are friendly, right? Might as well talk about it. Daniels, you see that the overall passing numbers weren't anything crazy. He didn't throw it a ton. The receiving game, the top 2 receivers in this game were running backs. The third was a tight end, so that's not ideal. And Terry McLaurin, who I mentioned, so much of this team is McLaurin, only 17 yards. He had the amount of yards that is on the back of his jersey. If the Commanders are going to win this game, they're going to need to get him more involved. Also, Tampa Bay did do a very good job at stopping the run the first time these two teams played. Jaden Daniels had a lot of effective scrambles in this game. You see, he had 88 rushing yards, 5.5 yards per carry, a pair of touchdowns. As a whole, though, the just straight up handing the ball off game didn't go great for the Commanders. However, let's get into some film. As I mentioned, though, we're talking about week 1. So much has happened since week 1. So I'm not just going to simply look at plays and say this is what happened week 1. Will it happen again? Instead, I'm going to kind of try to use this along with all the other tape that I have seen from these two teams. I've watched every snap both of these teams have played this season and kind of use that as a way to give a bigger picture. So, for example, this play, you see Tampa Bay's in zone coverage here. It's a zone blitz. This is something Tampa Bay does a lot. They did it in week 1. They've continued to do it. I see no reason why they won't do it again come playoff time. And you see when this play begins, to some degree, this is working. I mean, the Commanders have some of these shallow routes that they could decide to throw to. Daniels could make one of these quick throws, try to gain 5 yards or so. But here's what he did a lot in week 1 and what he's done a lot since then. You see edge rusher Yaya Diaby here is going for more of an inside move, and Daniels is just, he'll kill you if you try and do this. Tampa Bay likes to have their pass rushers be a little creative in how they rush the passer. You can't do it against Daniels. Watch him get outside, and he's going to rush and pick up the first down. This is one example of many. I could have shown probably, 5 or 6 of these plays he made week 1 alone, and he's continued to do it all season. So that's going to be a factor. Is there's going to be plays that Tampa Bay has covered, and Daniels can just use his legs to make it work. Let's go over here. Let's talk about Terry McLaurin, because that's another thing. So, okay, the rushing, the scrambling stuff is going to be good. I don't have any of the regular handoff stuff. Tampa Bay should do a pretty solid job at stopping that. We'll see how it goes. Tampa Bay tends to be pretty good at that, and they were in week 1 as well. I could see the Commanders getting a little bit more this time, though. But in the passing game, so Terry McLaurin is obviously their superstar wide receiver, right? Why didn't he get more touches the last time they played? This is a 3rd down and 3. You see that's where McLaurin is on the field. He's lined up one-on-one against Jamel Dean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers corner. It's worth mentioning Jamel Dean did not play week 18 because he is banged up. So that could be a big deal because he played McLaurin well the first time they played. But there were also stuff like this where you see that on this play. So right here, there was a window. Had Daniels gotten rid of this ball a little bit quicker, they could have potentially made something work, and they could have gotten the first down right here. Now, I will say, he went away from that matchup, and it ended up being incomplete. Tampa Bay's secondary corners, of which are different now. Again, a lot has changed, so we'll see how it goes. But if Daniels tries to hit on the secondary receivers, I don't know if that's as good of a matchup, actually, and it's especially not if Dean isn't out there. If Dean isn't out there, you got to target McLaurin more than they did week 1. Heading over here, this is another, I think, really fascinating thing I want to talk about is, Zach Ertz has been a real player for the Washington Commanders this season. On this play, he's going up against a guy who could be in the Hall of Fame someday, Lavonte David. You're going to see on this one that Ertz is going to win this matchup. I'm interested in seeing who wins that battle the most. I do think Daniels will target Ertz. He likes to. Could we see Lavonte David doing some nice stuff and being able to shut him down? If not, David means so much to this defense. If you can kind of neutralize him and be able to win a decent amount of one-on-ones, if you're Zach Ertz, that could mean a lot for the Commanders. But I actually think something like this might be what we see weirdly a lot of, is this is a cover 3 zone play. So what do? Well, Daniels is going to take the snap. He looks down the field. If Tampa Bay does cover down the field effectively, well, what do you do if you're Daniels? Well, one thing I wouldn't hate him doing a lot is just check the ball down. You see, that's what he's going to do here. It's what he did week 1, and it was an effective strategy. The Commanders' offense did all right the first time these two teams played. The defense did so bad, they were essentially just taken out of the game right when it started. But if you can get a better defensive performance, I do think this offense could thrive. So in conclusion, how does Washington have a more effective day offensively than they did last time? They weren't bad last time, but how can they improve upon that? Well, you got to throw to McLaurin more. You got to target him more. That's the first thing. I do think, again, these games often come down to depth. Can your number 2 and 3 guys win those one-on-one matchups? Because Tampa Bay doesn't love to double opposing teams' number 1 receivers, and that can get them in trouble. So that's something you want. I don't know if the running game is going to be more effective. Tampa Bay's run defense has played pretty well as of late, so I don't know how much you're going to get there. But to me, I do think there is a scenario where Daniels is rushing and McLaurin getting the ball more could be a real factor, especially if Dean is out. So this is my prediction. You see that Washington's offensive points per drive on the season is 2.82. The Buccaneers' defensive points per drive has actually gotten better as of late. It's 2.14. The first time they played, it was a 2.5 points per drive a game. My guess is actually that I think Washington does around what they've done all season, 2.8 points per drive. I think they'll have more success. Again, doing these previews early, we don't know who's going to be healthy and who isn't. But as a whole, I do think the Commanders should be able to move the ball effectively. I just don't think that's going to be enough in this game because I don't love their matchup defensively. My final score prediction is a high-scoring game, but I do have the Buccaneers ultimately winning 28-25. I'm predicting a lower possession game, so that's why the number isn't overall super high. But I'm expecting a high points per possession, long possession game that Tampa Bay can win by a field goal. feels like it could go either way. And actually, interestingly enough, I didn't do this intentionally, but that is the Vegas line right now. Again, at least as of recording this video, the Buccaneers are 3-point favorites, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, should be interesting. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.